In a small, quiet village far from the city, lived a poor boy named Zane. His life was hard. He had no family and no wealth. He worked every day just to earn enough food to survive. People in the village often made fun of him. They called him weak and poor, but Zane didn't care. All he wanted was to feel loved, something he had never experienced. He dreamed of a better life, even though he knew it was impossible. One night, after finishing his work, Zane walked home through the dark forest. The moon was full, and everything around him felt still and silent. He was used to the quiet, but tonight something was different. A cold breeze made him shiver, and the trees seemed to whisper. As he walked deeper into the forest, Zane saw something strange. A figure stood alone by the edge of the trees. It was a girl. She had long, black hair that shone in the moonlight. Her skin was pale, almost glowing, and her eyes seemed to be watching him. Zane stopped. He had never seen anyone like her before. The girl smiled when she saw him. Her smile was gentle, but it made Zane feel uneasy. "You're alone, Zane," she said, her voice soft and cold. Zane's heart raced. How did she know his name? He had never met her before. "Who are you?" Zane asked, his voice shaking with fear. The girl stepped closer. Her eyes glowed faintly red, and Zane felt a strange pull toward her. "I am Lilith," she said. "I've been watching you." Zane didn't know what to say. He felt both afraid and fascinated by her. "Why are you watching me?" he asked. Lilith smiled again. "Because you are special, Zane. You were different." "What do you mean?" Zane asked, his voice trembling. Lilith's smile faded, and her expression became serious. "I am not like other people," she said quietly. "I am a creature of the night. A vampire." Zane stared at her, unable to believe what he had just heard. "A vampire," he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes," Lilith said softly. "And now we are connected, Zane. You will see the truth soon enough." The air around them grew colder, and Zane felt the ground beneath his feet tremble. The trees creaked, and shadows moved. Zane wanted to run, but he couldn't move. Lilith stepped even closer, her eyes glowing brighter. "You can't escape now," she whispered. "We are meant to be together." Zane's heart pounded in his chest as he stared at Lilith. Her words echoed in his mind, "We are meant to be together." He didn't understand. How could this strange girl, who claimed to be a vampire, have anything to do with him? He took a step back, but his feet felt heavy, like they were glued to the ground. Lilith's eyes followed his every movement, glowing with an eerie red light. "Don't be afraid, Zane," she said, her voice soft and almost soothing. "I won't hurt you." But Zane wasn't sure if he believed her. A vampire. He had heard stories of vampires, but he thought they were just myths. "Why me?" Zane asked, his voice trembling. "Why are you telling me this?" Lilith took a step closer, her cold presence making the air feel even chillier. "Because, Zane, you are different from others. I saw something in you, something that no one else saw. A soul that is pure, untainted by greed or hate." Zane's mind raced. He had lived a hard life, but he had always tried to be kind to others. Was that what she meant? "You're lying," Zane said, shaking his head. "How can you be a vampire? Vampires don't exist." Lilith smiled a dark, knowing smile. "They do, Zane. I am one. And now, you are connected to me in a way that you cannot escape." Zane felt his knees weaken. He didn't know what to think or what to believe anymore. Everything seemed to be spinning around him. The cold wind whipped through the trees, and the shadows seemed to grow darker. He glanced at Lilith, and for the first time, he felt a strange connection to her. It was like she understood him in a way no one else ever had. "I don't want this," Zane whispered, taking another step back. Lilith's smile faded. "It's not about what you want, Zane. It's about fate. And fate has brought us together. You can't run from it." Zane wanted to run, but his body wouldn't move. He felt trapped. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "I want you to understand, Zane," she replied. "That we are more alike than you think. You, a boy with nothing, and me, a vampire with everything, but nothing that truly matters. We're both alone in this world." Zane looked into her eyes, and for a moment, he saw the loneliness there, as if she, too, was searching for something. But before he could say anything else, Lilith turned away. Come with me, she said softly, glancing back at him. I can show you a world beyond your wildest dreams. Zane stood frozen, torn between fear and curiosity. Could he trust her? Was he ready to step into the unknown, with a vampire who claimed they were connected? Zane hesitated. Every part of him wanted to run, to escape this strange girl and her chilling words. But something inside him, something he couldn't explain, kept him rooted to the spot. Her voice, her presence, even the loneliness in her eyes, it all drew him in. Where do you want me to go? He finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lilith smiled faintly. To a place where the truth lives, she said, turning toward the forest. Her pale hand reached out toward him, her fingers cold and inviting. Come, Zane, let me show you. Zane stared at her hand. He knew he shouldn't follow her. Every instinct in his body screamed that this was wrong, that she was dangerous. But the way she spoke made it feel like there was no choice. He swallowed hard and took her hand. Her touch sent a chill through his entire body, but he didn't pull away. Lilith led him deeper into the forest, where the trees grew taller and the shadows darker. The moonlight disappeared behind thick clouds, and the air became colder. Zane felt like they were walking into another world. The sound of their footsteps echoed strangely, as if the forest itself was alive and watching them. Where are we going? Zane asked nervously, his voice trembling. To my world, Lilith replied simply. Soon, they reached a clearing. In the middle stood an old, crumbling mansion. Its tall windows were shattered, and its walls were covered in creeping vines. The building looked like it had been abandoned for centuries, but a faint red glow flickered from within. What is this place? Zane asked, staring at the eerie mansion. My home, Lilith said. Or what's left of it. Zane hesitated at the edge of the clearing. I don't think I should be here. Lilith turned to him, her glowing eyes locking onto his. You're already here, Zane. There's no turning back now. Before he could respond, the sound of whispers filled the air. They came from nowhere and everywhere at once. The voices were soft but chilling, like 1,000 secrets being spoken at once. Zane's heart raced as he looked around, trying to find the source. What's happening? He asked, his voice shaking. They're welcoming you, Lilith said with a strange smile. Zane froze. Who's welcoming me? The shadows, Lilith replied, her voice soft but cold. You've stepped into their world now. And they never let anyone leave. As the whispers grew louder, the ground beneath Zane seemed to shift, as if it were alive. He felt panic rise in his chest. I don't want this, he shouted. I want to go back. Lilith stepped closer, her expression unreadable. You can't go back, Zane, she said. The moment you took my hand, your fate was sealed. The red glow from the mansion grew brighter, and Zane felt the air around him grow heavier. The shadows stretched toward him, as if they were alive. Lilith watched him silently, her face calm but unreadable. What do you want from me? Zane asked, his voice desperate. Lilith leaned in, her cold breath brushing against his ear. I want you to see the truth, she whispered. And to become part of my world. Zane felt trapped. The mansion loomed before him like a living beast, its broken windows staring down like hollow eyes. The whispers grew louder, surrounding him, but he still couldn't see where they were coming from. His legs felt weak, but Lilith's cold hand kept him steady. You don't need to be afraid, Lilith said, her voice calm and soft. This place, it's part of you now. I don't belong here, Zane muttered, his voice shaking. I don't want to be here. Lilith tilted her head, her glowing eyes piercing into him. You're wrong, Zane. This is exactly where you belong. Come inside, and you'll see. Before Zane could respond, Lilith pulled him toward the mansion. The heavy iron door creaked open on its own, and Zane felt a wave of cold air rush out. He hesitated at the entrance, but Lilith's grip tightened. She stepped inside, and Zane had no choice but to follow. The inside of the mansion was worse than Zane imagined. The walls were covered in dark red stains, and the air smelled of something metallic, something old. The floor creaked with every step, and the flickering red light seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. What is this place? Zane asked, his voice trembling. This is my world, Lilith said, her voice echoing slightly in the empty halls. And now, it's yours too. Zane's heart raced as he followed her deeper into the mansion. The whispers were louder now, and he could almost make out the words. They were calling his name. Why are they saying my name? He asked, looking around nervously. Because they've been waiting for you, Lilith said, stopping in front of a large wooden door. This is where it all begins. She pushed the door open, and Zane's breath caught in his throat. Inside was a grand room, but it was unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls were covered in mirrors, each reflecting something different. In one mirror, Zane saw himself as a child, happy and laughing. In another, he saw himself older, his face pale and lifeless. What is this? Zane whispered, stepping into the room. The red room, Lilith said. It shows you the truth. Your past, your future, and your fate. Zane turned to face her, panic rising in his chest. I don't want to see this. Lilith stepped closer, her face calm but her eyes filled with something darker. You have no choice, she said. The shadows chose you, Zane. You were always meant to be part of this. Suddenly, the mirrors began to crack, one by one, as the whispers turned into loud, distorted voices. The room shook, and Zane felt the ground shift beneath him. I can't do this, he shouted, trying to run, but the door slammed shut behind him. Lilith stood still, her expression unreadable. It's already done, Zane. There's no escape now. The largest mirror in the room shattered, and behind it, Zane saw a dark figure emerge. Its glowing red eyes locked onto him, and the voices grew louder, almost deafening. Zane froze in terror as the figure moved closer. What is that? Zane stammered, stepping back. Lilith didn't answer. She simply smiled, her fangs glinting in the dim red light. Zane's heart felt like it would explode as the dark figure stepped closer. Its red eyes glowed like fire, and its presence filled the room with a suffocating weight. The whispers turned into a low, growling chant, repeating his name over and over. Lilith, what's happening? Zane shouted, his voice breaking with fear. Lilith stood calmly, her glowing eyes fixed on the figure. This is your truth, Zane, she said softly. You were chosen long before tonight. This moment was always meant to happen. I don't understand, Zane cried, backing away until he hit the cold, cracked wall. The figure's shadow stretched across the room, reaching toward him like long, black claws. The figure finally stopped a few steps in front of Zane. It was tall and cloaked in darkness, its face hidden except for those piercing red eyes. Then it spoke, its voice deep and echoing. Zane, it said, you have entered our world. You cannot leave now. No, Zane shouted, shaking his head. I didn't ask for this. I don't belong here. You do, the figure said. You have always belonged here. You were born for this. Zane turned to Lilith, desperation in his eyes. Please, help me. I don't want this. Lilith's expression softened, and for a moment, Zane thought she might save him. But then she spoke, her voice calm and cold. I brought you here because I saw something in you, Zane. You were different from the others. You were pure. That purity will make you powerful in this world. What are you talking about? Zane demanded. Lilith stepped closer to him, her face inches from his. You're not just a boy, Zane. You're the key to our survival. The shadows chose you because you can become one of us. Zane felt his blood run cold. No, I don't want to be like you. You don't have a choice, Lilith whispered. This is your destiny. The figure raised its hand, and the room was filled with blinding red light. Zane screamed as he felt the shadows wrap around him, pulling him into their world. His body felt like it was burning and freezing at the same time. Let me go, Zane begged, his voice breaking. Lilith knelt beside him, her hand brushing his cheek. Don't fight it, Zane, she said softly. The pain will end soon. And then, you'll be one of us. The shadows consumed him completely, and Zane's screams echoed through the mansion. The light faded, and the room fell silent. When Zane opened his eyes, he was no longer the same. His skin was pale, his eyes glowed faintly red, and he felt an unnatural strength coursing through his body. What have you done to me? He asked, his voice trembling. Lilith smiled, her fangs glinting in the dim light. I saved you, Zane. You're no longer weak. You're one of us now, a creature of the night. Zane looked at his reflection in one of the cracked mirrors. He barely recognized himself. Fear and anger boiled inside him, but deep down, he felt something else, power. You said we're connected, Zane said, his voice low. What does that mean? It means, Lilith replied, taking his hand, that we are bound together forever. You and I will rule this world, Zane. Together. Zane stared into her glowing eyes, unsure whether to trust her, or to destroy her. But one thing was certain, his old life was gone forever.